there's a case study here in like the Siege of Leningrad, but you really feel like there's a like that fate is that's exactly why he would take his son out in that time. That is worse than death.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
like that is why the the bullets see escape.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there's this you just genuinely believe it would resort to this. It's cruel. It's horrible. You know.
Oh, absolutely.
But we were saying like I have a book on the Siege of Leningrad. Obviously, a lot of people you don't really. I guess you know what happened at the Siege of Leningrad in the Second World War, right? But it's not really. It's always briefly mentioned. I think when you watch a lot of documentaries on the Second World War, particularly when you talk about the Eastern Front, we always kind of learn about, I guess, Stalingrad and all the rest. I guess with reason because it was the turning point of the war, right? But so Leningrad is now St. Petersburg, but it was obviously attacked by the Nazis, well, Operation Barbarossa in 1941. But they basically just encircled the city. So on Hitler's orders, they just encircled it, and there was only like one way out, was Lake Lagoda. And it was like at a certain time of the year it was treacherous because it was like ice, and if you'd fall through, you're in trouble. So they couldn't get supplies in, they couldn't get supplies out, and it was people couldn't get out, but it was encircled for 872 days. But it was cut off. It was cut off in September 1941, and it isolated 3 million civilians. Basically, rations went as low as, to give you some context, rations went as low as 125 grams of bread per day. It was basically sawdust, essentially. Temperatures went down to like minus 30. Like 1.5 million civilians died from starvation, cold, and disease, and they were just inserted. And this was, they didn't bombard it. They just starved this. They just starved the city. But one of the big things that came out of it was cannibalism. So I've got a book on it. But it was widespread cannibalism came out later in declassified documents. So the NKVD, who were like kind of the Soviet secret police, they arrested thousands for basically. They arrested thousands of people for actually scavenging corpses and then active murder for food. Like there's horrific stories of like parents killing their own children to basically either out of mercy or desperation. There's a particular story that stuck with me where the woman killed the weaker child to feed the stronger ones, and we sit here now because we're well fed and everything. You don't know what you're capable of in that position. You know, the will to live is a strong thing.
Yeah.
But it kind of shows both sides, right? There was elements of humanity in here as well. So people resorted to that, but some people, like particularly teachers, they actually continued to teach to keep children sane. There's a poet by the name of Olga Bagolts. She actually broadcast poetry. Neighbors, there were stories of neighbors sharing like precious rations with one another. And it kind of like there was still some humanity, and it kind of represents the boy in the story. There's some morality. But yeah, I'll read a passage here. But I think this is why that scene in particular sticks with me, because I'm like, I know there's nothing about this that's far fetched. People would genuinely resort to this. Like it's.
Well, it's not the first time in Russia that's happened as well. During the famines in the 1920s.
Yeah,
there were similar things in the same area actually, where they had these gangs that would go hunt children and other people like that, and then sell them as amongst the horse meat and beef.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, they what were they? They sell them as cutlets or something.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So I'll read a passage here. So this is actually from a book by Anna Reid called Leningrad. I'd really recommend it actually. Anthony Beaver and Max Hastings recommend it too.
Yeah.
So the city leadership was kept fully informed by the NKVD, which detailed its first 9 cases of the use of human meat as food in its situation report of 13th of December 1941. A mother had smothered her 18-month-old daughter in order to feed herself and 3 older children. A 26-year-old man, laid off from his tire factory, had murdered and eaten his 18-year-old roommate. A metal worker who was a member of the party and his son had killed 2 women refugees with a hammer and hidden their body parts in a shed. An unemployed plumber had killed his wife in order to feed their teenage son and nieces, hiding her remains in the toilets of the Leningrad Workers' Hostel. 10 days later, 13 more cases were reported. An unemployed 18-year-old had murdered his grandmother with an axe, boiling and eating her liver and lungs. A 17-year-old had stolen an unburied corpse from a cemetery and put the flesh through a tabletop mincer. A cleaner had killed her 1-year-old daughter and fed her to her 2-year-old. Also among the first to resort to eating human meat were the criminally neglected pupils. but like in that passage alone. So there's a lot more in that book, but there's a whole chapter. Like the actual chapter of that book is called Corpse Eating and Person Eating. It was so a lot of this was kept under wraps until years later, but I guess a case study a lot of what goes on when you're pushed to the limits. It's horrific.
Yeah.
Horrific.
Well, there's still parts of the world that still practice cannibalism, don't they, today?
Oh, yeah.
Like in Papua New Guinea, there's rumours of it and stuff. Like, yeah, it's pretty grim, isn't it?
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.